Ashley, great to see you again. I spoke to you just about a month ago for Fear Street, of course.
Yeah,
And boy, were you ever amazing in that. And now you give us this. Seriously, is there anything you can't do?
it's been a fun few years, but yeah, it's been really enjoyable. But that's a fun connection. Yeah.
It's great because, you go from something like that, the scary and all the fun stuff, and then you're taking on this iconic character. I mean, let's not, pussyfoot around here, okay? Robert Langdon is a beloved character to not just people who had seen him in the films, of course, but Dan Brown's novels. So my first question, of course, is the obvious. Had you read any of his books? Were you familiar with the character?
Okay, I hadn't read the books before auditioning, but just because I had missed them, like it's not like at least I didn't read one book and then went like that's not for me.
Right.
So luckily I got through and I got the role, and then after the fact it was just lucky that I hadn't read them, because then I had 3,000 pages to read about the character I was about to play, so I could read it in a very different way. I was reading it looking for clues, looking for ideas, looking for things I can pull on.
Right.
And our story is very much an origin story, even though it's the third book. We can pull on those strings of who he becomes later on, and we can sort of like look at what else is there. Also, because it's television, we have more time, so we can really like explore those ideas a little bit, like his claustrophobia, his loneliness, all those ideas and things that we can kind of play with.
Yeah, which is amazing to have that kind of luxury to, stretch out a character and really get into his head. But, I was wondering if there's any kind of pressure or nervousness with taking on such a character like this, especially for the fact that, I mean, come on, you're following in the footsteps of, this up-and-comer Tom Hanks, really? So
I think, there's a certain amount of, healthy level of nerves before starting anything.
Yeah.
I think for some reason, because I'm not sure why I avoided the feelings of that specific kind of pressure, but maybe it was because it was an origin story, maybe because our story is just so different.
Right.
I could put myself into something without feeling tied to those ideas. I think there was something comfortable about the fact that, if people love the films or the books, that's helpful to us, because that's something that actually, we want people to see how the person I'm playing will become the person that they love. So, for some reason it never, aside from it just being an honor to be invited to play something that's so meaningful to people, I never, that specific pressure I never felt. Also, the other thing is that, and I think when people start seeing the show, is that the scripts are just so good. Like there's just such a wealth of information and ideas and heart in them that, nerves sort of disappear once I throw myself into that. Like there's just too much to occupy me. All the noise go away. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine, just, set that aside, do your job. And that's what it's all about, for sure. And what is so awesome too, is it's, Dan Brown is an EP on this. He was around, he was there for you if you needed him. How much did you kind of sit down and talk to him about what you wanted to bring to this character? Is that a little scary?
Well, luckily I do have a healthy level of hubris, but I would never tell Dan Brown what I personally would want to bring to the character.
Hey, Dan, look, you should have written it this way.
Left out that I would love to include. But, he was there before we were about to shoot the pilot the first time we were about to shoot it. And luckily I was able to have dinner with him. And it was remarkable that he said something that I actually didn't understand at the time. I couldn't understand at the time. And I actually still think about that. He said, Robert Langdon's someone who would love to have faith, but can't. And because I personally am such a, cynic's not the right word, but I just, I'm very fact-based. I don't have any faith or religion in me. Like that's not something that I lean on. So it's through my lens that's something that's very hard to understand. But over the next 6 months before we were able to finally shoot the pilot, and then now in the show, I understand that more and more, and that it's actually fascinating. So that one thing he said, he just knew the exact right thing to tell me,
Wow.
that I haven't stopped meditating on, and that is the center of the show. It's a person who knows too much,
Right.
and that stops him from actually trusting or feeling anything, because he can't believe something that he doesn't know to be true. And so I didn't know the stories were about that, but once he put that in my head, it's just something I couldn't unsee.
Yeah, I can imagine. And when he writes, like he's such a master writer, obviously, it's very academically complicated, but when it makes sense, you know what I mean? Like, even though this guy's so smart, and did that come into play? Like, did you discuss that element as well?
We didn't. I think that was something that he would have discussed a lot with the writers, and the writers would have managed, because also there's one thing to do it in a book where you could like suddenly have 6 pages about the Templar Knights, and that'd be really intriguing if I just spoke for half an hour about the Templar Knights, not as
Change the channel, sorry,
yeah.
but
So I think it is a real
yeah.
magic trick, moving those ideas from book to screen, having that still that same enjoyment of information, that feeling that you get from the books, that you're learning something while being entertained,
Mm-hmm.
and have that all be character driven and story driven. And I think the writers do a great job. Hopefully I do.
Oh, hello. No, you're listen, you put such a great spin on this. I mean, what I love about from the episodes that I've had the opportunity to see you play, I mean, he's complicated. It's such an interesting, to me, seems like a very challenging role. Has this been pretty much one of the biggest challenges you've had in your career so far?
I don't, when I'm playing anything, it seems like the biggest challenge. I think it's actually more challenging when I don't find it a challenge.
Okay, yeah.
If I find things too easy, yeah, that's always far more uncomfortable for me. Like, as long as I'm occupied by something, and I think that definitely I love how I love how challenging he is. That he's so confusing and confounding, that his behavior and his will is often so different. I find that that's a very fascinating thing to explore every day.
Yeah. Did you find yourself relating to him in any way?
Yeah, the idea of thinking too much and having a hard time acting based on instinct and feeling. Sure, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like I say, you do it so well. And I'm going to wrap up, but I just want to ask you. Like I said, we've seen you in so many great things over the years, and you make such wonderful choices. What is it usually about a project that draws you in?
It's funny. I even though this doesn't sound like something that's that playable, or on the day doesn't help that much. I think the first thing about the project itself is that I just need to know what's going to get me out of bed every morning, that it has some relevance, that it's an idea that the world is thinking about right now. I think that's something that gets me excited about a project. And I think there's something about this, from reading the scripts, because I hadn't read the books yet, there's just I think the world is having this reckoning between fact and fiction. And I think that's just that's a nice, like, compass to have in my pocket every day of work. That's something that we can that's something that keeps me grounded every day.
Amazing, amazing. Well, congratulations on this. I can't wait for Canadians to get a
Thanks.
chance to see this. It's going to start next weekend, and we're really excited for you. And hopefully we'll get you across the border once everything's all settled, and we can have a cup of coffee together.
Yeah, we're shooting in Toronto.
How did I not know that? How did I not know that? Okay, so now I'm going to look for you on the streets of Toronto, and you owe me a coffee.
Toronto, in the streets of Washington, D.C.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Best of luck with the series. Take care. Bye-bye.